Hey everyone, today I'm back in Final Fantasy XIV as our newest Criterion dungeon, Mount Rockon, shouldn't be too far away anymore, and because of it last night, me and some friends from my static decided to hop back into our old Criterion dungeon, which came out I think about a year ago at this point, to kind of start finishing the grind over there, because a lot of us still had a bunch of coins lying around, and we only needed a handful of runs to be able to buy the mount from that dungeon. Now I think most of us have already dropped a mount while we were farming it, but because we were also close to being able to buy a new one, we wanted to go and finish that grind and kind of also just get back into the swing of things. The old Criterion dungeon was probably my favorite piece of content when it came out. Doing it again yesterday, it just was a lot of fun, and it made me really look forward to our newest Criterion dungeon. It was just great in terms of thematic, in terms of the mechanics that were in there. It was like basically somewhere between Savage and Extreme Trial level. The party size was fine. Like, basically, the Criterion dungeon is hands down the most favorite piece of content that has come out in this expansion and probably in Final Fantasy in just a very long time. So that makes me very excited looking towards our next one. Now, it's going to be called Mount Rockon. It's going to be in Higashi, aka the eastern side of the world, so it's going to be kind of like Eastern themed, Japanese themed, whatever you want to call it, which I'm a pretty big fan of those thematics, so I'm probably going to be enjoying this dungeon quite a bit. Now, when it comes down to the dungeon itself, the experience, I'm sure that's going to be great. All I'm hoping for is that they kind of make the reward structure a little bit better, because that is something that was a really big bummer on the old Criterion dungeon, and it's also something that yesterday, when we did a couple of runs, I was reminded of again. Like, we did, I think it was 4 runs or something, we got our 4 coins per clear, and that was it. There's not really much else to show for it, not even some materia that dropped or whatever. I kind of forgot everything that you can buy with the coins. But it's definitely not all that interesting when it comes down to a piece of content that is actually quite challenging. And it's also multiple bosses as well that you have to be fighting, whereas if you were to compare it to like an Extreme Trial, there's just one boss that you're fighting. Here you're fighting like 3 of them back to back, and if you don't clear all 3 in one run, you gotta reset from the first one again. So in my opinion, I feel like they could definitely do something with the reward structure. When it comes down to like the mount farming time requirement, I guess you could say, I feel like it's fine, because I believe you need like 25 runs of the Criterion dungeon to guarantee that you can buy the mount with the tokens, which is half of the time that it takes to get it from an Extreme Trial, which makes sense because the dungeon takes about twice as long to clear compared to clearing from Extreme Trial. So I'm fine on that regard. But outside of that, the rest of the rewards are kind of lackluster. When you're doing an Extreme Trial, you can still get weapons that are very relevant if you're doing like the newest Extreme Trial, but in Criterion you're not really getting anything like that. So I'm kind of going back on the point that I made all this time ago, that I would really love to see Tombstone upgrade items coming from this. I'm not saying that we need to get a Tombstone item every run, but maybe every 5 runs or something, we have enough coins to buy a Twine or a Shine. I think that would be completely fine, because we're still going to be limited by how many Tombstone pieces we can actually buy from the weekly Tombstone lockout that is still going to be in place. When it comes down to the dungeon itself, I've been a really big fan of that. Basically got reminded of that again yesterday as well, because you can just kind of play whatever you want. When it comes down to Savage, and I'm going to touch on this in a different video as well, when I talk about Red Mage, because I've had a really good time on Red Mage lately. I kind of want to make a video on that as well, but I'm kind of stuck on Red Mage when it comes down to Savage, because one, I don't really want to relearn all of the fights on Black Mage, which I want to be playing in the future, but not just wanting to relearn the fights for me personally. I feel like I'm kind of a backup or like a backbone of the party as well, because usually I'm able to survive most of the mechanics, and then I'm there to kind of pick up the scrap from everybody that on the floor, and Red Mage kind of helps us clear in one night. Whereas if I feel like if I were to switch over to Black Mage, it would take us a lot longer to clear the fights, because we don't have that backup of a Reser that can just resurrect a bunch of people in one go if something does were to go wrong. In Criterion, that's not the case. You can play whatever you want, because you don't have to rely on resing the normal way, because those are just disabled. Everybody gets their res token, so that's basically all there is to it, and that means that I get to play Black Mage. Of course, if I really wanted to, I could go play Black Mage for Savage as well, but I feel I would kind of be shooting myself and the group in the foot that way, because it would just make our clears much more difficult. In the Criterion, again, it doesn't matter, so I'm definitely going to be playing Black Mage for that, which is why I was also playing Black Mage yesterday, and I had a really good time on it. The reason why I want to play Black Mage is because it is still one of the classes that I'm not super comfortable on, I guess you could say, and I've always wanted to get better at it, because I've always thought Black Mage was a really cool class to learn and to optimize, and taking it into something completely new that I haven't already experienced a couple of times with my group means that I'll be able to like learn the fights on Black Mage, optimize things as we go along, and then it's just going to be a nice learning experience for the entire group together, rather than me switching jobs halfway through, like re-clears or something, and then me being the one that just like has to relearn things, whereas the rest of the group just wants to get their re-clear done. So that's why I've decided to wait with switching to Black Mage until Criterion comes out, but I'm really looking forward to that because I had a lot of fun on Black Mage yesterday, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing it a bit more. Now, when it comes down to clearing old Criterion dungeons, and this is something that I also think is a really good thing about these Criterion dungeons, is that they're item level synced. Now, of course, they are item level synced a couple of item levels above what you were able to get way back when they first released. I believe back when it came out, you could be item level 620, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure on that, and this is like synced 5 item levels above that. It's a very normal thing to do, because when we look at the old ultimates, those are also item level synced 5 item levels above what you could get at the time, and that is kind of to compensate for the loss of materia, because for those that don't know, when you level sync down, you lose the materia that's in your gear. What does mean is that this makes it very easy for you to go into old Criterion dungeons and still have a pretty good experience, because all you need to do is make sure that you have the correct gear equipped with the subsets that you want. So when it came down for me to play Black Mage, I just had to equip a couple of crafted pieces of gear that had some spell speed on them, and I was good to go. I didn't have to care about getting the old best in slot, didn't have to care about getting the correct melts. I just needed to get the pieces that had the stats that I wanted on them. And then we went in, and it just felt really good to play. Of course, comparing it to back then, you are going to be doing more damage, you're a little bit more tanky as well, so the dungeon is going to feel a little bit easier, but because the mechanics are still quite punishing if you do end up failing them, I don't really feel like it's too much of an issue. The main thing that I felt was impacted by us being a little bit stronger is that we were usually able to skip the final mechanic of most of these bosses. Or even then, like, we would still see the start of the final mechanic and then kill the boss halfway through, which I feel like was kind of the case back then as well. It just dies like maybe 10-15 seconds faster now. Nothing too crazy. So I think that's really cool, because it means that people that did not get to experience the Criterion dungeons back when they came out because they were busy doing something else, for example, they can have a very easy time just getting back into it, because there's no real grind that you need to get through. You immediately have the gear that you need, and then all that's left is for you to just learn the dungeon's mechanics, and you can go like that. And of course, if you want to play multiple roles or jobs in there, it's very easy to switch as well, because all that you need is like some crafted gear from our new raid tier, and then you're just good to go in there. So I think that's a really great system. Overall, I'm really looking forward to our new one. I'm really looking forward to the thematic. Of course, the encounters and their mechanics is something that I'm quite curious about as well, but I'm just really excited for it. The old Criterion dungeon was great. I've got very high expectations of the new one, and if they were to just restructure the rewards that you can get from that, then I think I'm going to have a very good time going through this new dungeon. The proc was really fun for the old one, so I'm looking forward to that. And then just the re-clears were really fun as well. It's content that is engaging to play, it's not too extremely difficult, so you still get to have some fun with your friends and have some banter and voice chat. You only need 4 players, so it's easier to schedule around. And it's also like, I prefer being on voice chat with just a handful of people rather than like a full group of 8 people, because that's where things sometimes get a little bit too rowdy. So for me, this content is really just the perfect piece of content in the game for me. which is why I'm really excited about it. So with that, I'm also going to be kind of do like a follow-up video of this. Once the dungeon does come out, kind of talk about what they changed, maybe if they made any changes, and if not, we'll just kind of see it over there, but I'll definitely do a first impressions of it. I am planning to go and clear the Savage version of this one again as well, because that was pretty fun too when we did it way back when. How that's been done, I think is pretty good as well. Like, you just farm normal mode a bunch, you get used to the mechanics, and then you go into hard mode where things are a little bit more difficult, but because you're already so used to the mechanics from normal mode, nothing really changes there. So you can kind of like get your practice in normal mode and then go into Savage to get your title and your 1 clear. Although I am kind of curious to see if they actually changed something about Savage when it comes down to rewards for that, because right now it's basically like you get 1 clear of Savage and there's no real reason to go back in there, which I didn't really mind too much, but I'm curious to see if there's maybe like another reason to go back into Savage in the future, maybe something like a weekly lockout, something like that. But we'll have to wait and see about that. For now, really excited about it. Let me know down below what your thoughts were on the old Criterion dungeon, and if you're looking towards the new one, definitely curious to see about that. And yeah, I think that was just about everything I wanted to cover. So I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.